it's important not to only have everyone in the conversation, but to have them in the conversation in a meaningful way at almost all times. So the way we like to portray it is this way. If you have various people that get labeled by, in my world, they get labeled by their degrees or their you know, whatever it is they study. So they're anthropologists, they're engineers, they're business people, they're computer scientists, they're doctors. And the point simply is, I might work with a doctor being an engineer, or I might work with an anthropologist, which I have actually. And the point simply is, if I just do the engineering and the anthropologist, he does the anthropology, we're always going to be where we've always been. However, if we each come out of our own comfort zone, if we each kind of move towards somewhere where we end up in the middle, and it's not comfortable, believe me, I've done a lot of it, but it brings you to some place you will never get to by yourself. And that's one of the important things to understand in this design thinking idea. It breaks down the roles of what people are.
Like any process, you know, design is something that is fluid. It's a bit more organic. I'm an artist at heart, but what we need, all of us need, is a bit of rigor and structure and discipline. And so much of that happens throughout the process, but it's really invisible to the end user. It's not what we are really ultimately concerned with. What we're concerned with is that fluid flow. If you're not familiar with this little orange stripe here, it's a strand of DNA that we hide into every product that we make, either in form, color, something like that. Graphically, this is a part of who we are as an organization. But it takes a lot of rigor and discipline to create that flow, to create that seemingly natural element, that fluid element. Because at the end of the day, it really isn't about the flow, it's about the human experience. To give you an example, as Bernie was talking, I was thinking about architecture for whatever reason, I don't know. But you know, in this context, the rigor and discipline comes in building a really strong foundation. So this product or any problem, any exercise, requires a really strong foundation. But when you experience architecture, when you experience a building, no one thinks about the foundation that's poured. What people think about, what people care about is the space planning. They care about the details. They care about how light comes in the window, how you can interact, what is the overall experience to the end user, and how you live and work in that space. And that's where we come from as designers.
There's more than $1 billion worth of R&D that goes into designing an SoC and a mobile phone. I live kind of in a state of continuously questioning this, like, are we exploring enough even within inside of the businesses that we have? Because at some point you have to execute, you have to design products, you have to generate revenues, and how do you live within inside of these businesses, but then invest enough into Explore, which Explore costs money and doesn't produce profit. There's there's 5 areas that we develop goals as we think about the concepts. And the first is, what's the system concept? And when I first went to work for Nokia, back more than 20 years ago, I was designing a baseband chip that went into one of the early handsets. So we had all the teams that were designing the semiconductors and printed circuit boards. And then we had guys like Darren, who are essentially doing the industrial design for the handset. And we said, you know, you guys need to fit this phone around all these boards that we've designed and all these semiconductors. And to their credit, you know, they came up with something. I was talking with Tony Fadell after the launch of the iPhone, and I said, how did you guys ever come up with your design? He says, well, we just thought about what the consumer would want. We thought about the user interface. We thought about the mechanics. And then we told the designers, it's got to fit in there. If it doesn't fit in there, it doesn't go in. Which you'll notice the first iPhone didn't have 3G in it, and that's one of the reasons. It wouldn't fit in both size as well as thermal characteristics. So if we think about system concept in a semiconductor company, we're trying to anticipate the design requirements of our customers.
Tier 4 is an EPA regulation. So government mandate to hit emissions reductions by over 70% from Tier 3 in this case. This is a good visual to show that, you know, over the past 15 years, what the EPA has done in terms of the railroad space to reduce these oxides of nitrogen and particulate matter. And it's also a good visual to show the drop that we had to execute against between tier 3 into tier 4 and operate really in this little tiny window that we have down here now. It's easy to think that this is a government mandate. You kind of got to go out and do it and figure it out, right? But there was different ways to approach this challenge that the government had set. And one of the things that's kind of interesting to note is the Railroad Association had actually, anticipating this, had thought that the industry would go a certain way with technology, what we call after-treatment systems. So something that you put on board the engine to capture these emissions and reduce them that way. So much so that actually a decade prior to this being implemented, they released a new regulation expanding the profile of the locomotive itself, expecting that we would be putting after-treatment systems on top of the engine. And really what's neat about this story is we discovered a way to approach this problem differently and actually not have to put that burden on our customers.